Right, so now what we're going to talk about is the structure of the nervous system. See here is that the human nervous system is divided into what is called the central nervous system, which is right here, and what is termed the peripheral nervous system, right, which is what you see here. Now, first we're going to look at what the peripheral nervous system is, but very briefly, I'm going to show you what the central nervous system also consists of. So, the central nervous system mainly consists of the brain and the spinal cord. And the peripheral nervous system, that consists of all of the nerve fibers, right? All nerve fibers that lie outside of the center, so outside of the spinal cord and the brain, right? All of the nerve fibers, which are basically the axons, right? These are what make up the peripheral nervous system, right? Now, even within the peripheral nervous system, you have these two different kinds of division. So the first here is the somatic nervous system, and the second is the autonomic nervous system. Now, what exactly is the somatic nervous system? Now, the somatic nervous system is basically all of those nerve fibers, right, that carry information from the central nervous system, so basically the spinal cord and the brain, right, to all of these different motor glands, right, to these joints, right, to the skin, right? So basically, the somatic nervous system consists of all of the nerve fibers that connect, your voluntary muscles and their movements, right, to whatever you experience or feel on the level of your skin glands, right? Right? So it's the communication signal between the central nervous system and all of these different components, right? And what happens really is that there are two different kinds of, or two different routes of nerve fibers, right? So, one are those that are carrying signals from the central nervous system to these motor or skin glands, right? And these basically could be signals about, for example, how to behave, let's suppose, right? And these are called, these are basically called efferent nerve signals or efferent domains, right? Because these are outgoing signals. These are basically what are traveling from the central nervous system to motor or skin glands, right? Then the next route that you have is the direct opposite, in which you have signals going in from motor glands or skin glands to the central nervous system. And these nerve fibers are called afferent with an A, right? So this is basically what the somatic nervous system looks like. That it is responsible for mainly controlling all sorts of voluntary movement that happen at the level of joints, right? What you experience on your skin, right? All other motor glands, all other you know um, joints are controlled by the somatic nervous system, right? And there are two different sort of pathways from which make up the somatic nervous system. One is the afferent and one is the afferent with an A, right? And these are basically the incoming nerve fibers, right? And now we come to the second division, which is the autonomic nervous system, right? And this is basically the involuntary system. So we talked about how the somatic nervous system is what controls voluntary movement, right? All of these voluntary actions that an individual partakes in. But the autonomic nervous system controls all these involuntary body movements, right? So what exactly are these involuntary body movements? Let's look at that. So what the autonomic nervous system does is that it consists of nerve fibers that connect to the heart, right? Different blood vessels, smooth muscles, and different glands, right? Basically, if you guys have heard about the fight or flight reaction, right? So the autonomic nervous system is heavily implicated in the fight versus flight response, which is basically, something. So if, for example, you find yourself in a very, very dangerous situation, right? There are certain reactions that happen automatically. So, for example, your heart rate goes up, right? Here, your heart begins to pump blood faster, and what that does is that your blood vessels they sort of they become wider, right? None of these actions are voluntary. You don't decide to make your heartbeat go faster. Um, you might experience some sort of contraction in your smooth muscles, right? Your glands, for example, the glands that control your hormones, they might start releasing certain kinds of hormones. Now, all of these actions, or for example, your sweat glands may start producing a lot more sweat. Now, all of these reactions are involuntary. None of these are voluntary actions, right? So in this sense, the autonomic nervous system really controls everything that is involuntary, right? So, very basic functions such as your heart rate, the rate at which your heart is pumping out blood, what exactly are your muscles doing? Are they contracting? Are they relaxed? How much sweat are your sweat glands producing? All of these things are controlled by the autonomic nervous system. Now, the autonomic nervous system is further divided into two different categories. So basically, one, you have the sympathetic nervous system, and then you have what is called the parasympathetic division. So basically, the sympathetic division is what makes you ready for the fight or flight response. Now let's look at how it does that. Here on the right side, you have the sympathetic division, right? And basically, what it does is that it mobilizes you. So when I said that, it basically gets you ready for the fight or flight response. That's what it's doing, right? And here, so for example, what it's doing is that you have increased respiration, which basically means your breathing has increased. The rate at which you're breathing, right, has increased. Then there's increased heart rate, right? Then you have this other action that's happening in which your digestion is inhibited. This is basically an attempt to, conserve energy and to basically route it elsewhere, right? Then you have the secretion of adrenal hormones, right? That's another hormone, adrenaline, that is really implicated in the fight or flight response. So that is something that's also taking place here. Then you have increased secretion by sweat glands, right? Your hair follicles are raised so that you get goosebumps, and your bladder is also relaxed, right? So all of these are happening within the sympathetic division, which is basically what it's enabling you to do is that it's enabling you to fight or flee, right? With all of this, breathing rate, which is increasing, heart rate that's increasing. So it's enabling your body, or it's preparing your body to mobilize, to be very, very alert, right? On the other hand, you have the parasympathetic division, which basically what it does is that after some sort of threatening situation has passed, right? What it does is that it relaxes the body, or it conserves energy. So whereas the sympathetic division was mobilizing, the parasympathetic division conserves, right? And here what you see is that, it does pretty much the opposite of what the sympathetic division was doing. So here you have, salivation becomes stimulated. Here it was inhibited. Here, your heart rate falls, your breathing rate is decreasing, your digestion is again stimulated, your bladder is again contracted, there is no secretion of adrenal hormones, there is no secretion by sweat glands, or you don't have goosebumps. So what it's doing is that it's relaxing the body, and this is something that you might experience if, for example, you've just encountered a very, very threatening situation. So, you might feel this sort of this very, very relaxed feeling all of a sudden, right? So that is basically your parasympathetic division of the peripheral nervous system, which is kicking in, right? So yeah, so this is basically what it is. And usually parasympathetic division kicks in after a threatening situation has passed. All right. So this is basically some bit about the peripheral nervous system.